most businesses can't succeed without their employees, without their team. They need them there to function the day-to-day and to serve their clientele or their mission, whichever it may be. So if part of your team errs on a technology base and you get hacked, you may have insurance to cover it, true enough. What about that team member that made the mistake, a simple mistake that we can all make, that caused that? How are they going to feel? Are they going to feel valued, or that they added value? Are they going to want to come back tomorrow?
So welcome to Learn Online Security Podcast. I'm Tamara Michéle, your host, and today we have David and Valerie McInnes. Nice to meet you both, and thanks for joining us.
You're welcome. Great to be here. The phrase that I want our staff to outgrow us, I think is really important, and that's where that personal and professional growth come in. We want them to get as much as they possibly can out of their time with us, whether it's through professional development, in whatever the business might be, but also that personal growth. So getting better at customer service or speaking with people or doing project management, all those different skills that they learn, no matter what the job is, all of those skills come into play. And so providing staff with an opportunity to decide where they want to grow. Yeah, we'll direct them to some of the things that we need them to do to work within our organization or our business, but also what do they want to do themselves to be better them, so they can bring their best self to us. And I think that's where that balance between professional and personal growth within an organization is really important. Even one of the nonprofit bodies that I work with, it's a board of people that we're just getting together for the first time as a new board. And I've built in portions of our time where we're going to look at personal growth. We're there to support the organization, but also we need to be there for ourselves so that we can bring our best selves to the table. And so I think no matter what, whether it's an enterprise, a business, a large capital company, a nonprofit, there's an opportunity for the people to have both the professional and the personal growth within their time with that organization.
I think probably a good example of that would be the not-for-profit organizations where people come on chairs and boards and they volunteer their time. So really, the thing that they get back from that the most is the experience. Would you say that, so it's not just professional, it'd also be personal? Because you had also talked about, like if you see someone struggling or they're unhappy or they feel like they can't grow or they're boxed in, they're not going to do their best work for you.
We often expect the very best out of our team members. And when there's 24 hours in a day and you're giving 7 or 8 of those hours to your employer, we can't expect them to be the best. We will often say that we like to employ and we encourage those that we partner with, those we consult and mentor with, to employ whole people. And what we mean by that is there's no real such thing as work-life balance, in my opinion, anymore. There's work-life seasons. There's times when you need to be more work-centric, and there's times where you need to be more family and home life-centric. And being able to support that, but also support the person in feeling actually enriched. So you may work in the banking industry, but if you really, really want to learn how to knit, and we can help you learn how to knit, you're going to feel better and more confident and more valued when you give us those 7 or 8 hours in your 5 days a week. And it's our opinion that it's hugely important that corporately we start looking at the people, not the paper.
Well, and I think you're probably giving them a lot more incentive. Again, that goes hand in hand with the trust, right? And working for somebody that you enjoy working for. Because how many people do you hear complain about their bosses or their workplaces because they're toxic or they don't want to be there for this, that, or the other reason, right? Mm-hmm. And if they were supported there, not just with their colleagues, but with their leadership, they would feel that a lot more. They'd be an incentive to stay, right, and to learn all that they can. Mm-hmm. And I really like the idea that you're, like that you use knitting, which is kind of funny because that's like a form of mindfulness or whatever. Like lots of people have stress and anxiety in their life. I mean, whatever outlets that they can do will make them a better person at work, right? They'll have outlets, basically.
Pizza parties don't prepare people for bad days. They really don't. And too many cultures, business corporations and the cultures right now, they reward everything with a pizza party. we're going to give you a pizza party. And it's time we started feeding the actual person, their mind, their soul, their personal passions over basically just trying to ramp up our profits. Oh, good job. Here's $1 pizza. Now get back to work and give me the next best 40 that you've got. And that's not right to the people, and that's not fair.
And I think when we think of larger businesses and corporations where they're employing hundreds of people, I could hear somebody saying, well, how am I supposed to do that? I've got 100 employees. You find those leaders that don't have the title of leader and give them the responsibility of having their little community of colleagues that they engage with and support. It's possible. It takes a bit of planning. It takes partnerships with maybe external bodies as well to support your team. But I think it's possible, no matter how small or large you are as an organization or a company, to still pay attention to everybody. I can remember I was a principal, actually when I was a guidance counselor way back a long time ago, and I learned the kids' names. Didn't always remember their last names, but I worked really, really hard to remember the junior and senior high kids that I was working with, to remember their first name. And that made a difference to them, simply learning their name. We escaped to Mexico once in a while for a bit of a R&R, and we went back a second time to one of the resorts, and one of the waitresses remembered us. They see hundreds of thousands of people, but I asked her how to say her name, and she remembered me asking her how to say her name. That's what we need to do within our organizations. It doesn't have to be an hour-long conversation. It needs to be recognition that I'm actually in this seat doing work for you that makes a difference in the end. And every person in an organization, their jobs are critical, no matter what they do. And I think sometimes we lose sight of that when we think of larger businesses or larger organizations that are trying to manage the masses.
If leaders don't know the names of their people, if leaders have, well, let's start off with, if, like Valerie said, if a leader has 100 or more people that's directly reporting to them on their team, hey, give us a call. We'd like to talk about your organizational structure and how we can help you be a little more successful in your day-to-day. But if you don't know the names of your people, respectfully, I'm going to say I would question your leadership, period. If you can't walk up to a person and know that they don't necessarily look okay today, that's not the type of leader I want to be. There was a point in my life I had over 226 people join the organization in a span of less than 60 days. And I made it a point to know each and every one of them by name, by face. And I'm not saying that because I'm better than anybody else. I'm saying that because that's my belief system. At Rare Leadership, that's our belief system. We are accountable to those people.
And I want to kind of bring this back around because we had talked in the very beginning about kind of cybersecurity and all the risks and stuff. And I can't help but think of, when I meet someone and they remember my name, you feel like you made an impact with that person. That's just it's like, oh, you remember me? Like wow, like it actually gives you a really good feeling, right? Especially if you haven't seen them for a while and they know your name. It's sort of shocking, I find, in this era. How much more would those employees be willing to go to you when they know that you know their name? Like if there was any issues with security or, they were unsure of something. And again, that's kind of like closing those loopholes.
And I've had a number, through my different careers, I've had a number of team members come to me and say, I like my job, but it's not what I want to do for the rest of my life. And I think as leaders, it's incumbent upon us to say, then what do you? And how can we get you there? Because if we're not helping people succeed and be their best, that's not my definition of leadership.
Well, and I can see how lots of things fail when you have not just poor leadership, but you have low engagement, right? Because with good leadership comes high engagement. And I know people throw these words around all the time, but I've worked in places that had seasons of very high engagement where you felt rewarded for the work that you did and you were acknowledged, and it wasn't monetary, and it was actually just they had better managers on the floor, and you actually enjoyed going to work every day. Do you know what I mean? Because they remembered your kids, or they remembered that you had baseball on the weekend, for your, your 6-year-old, or like, it was really surprising, to have that, because then you actually feel human, you feel connected.
And if you can give your team the tools and the resources, the passion and the drive to climb Mount Everest, whether that's your Mount Everest as a corporation or their Mount Everest in their life, that's success. That's truly what it's about. If you've empowered, if you've given somebody the skills, the tools, the resources to truly succeed, that's powerful. And as a team, if it's within your organization, if you've got a Mount Everest and you can rally that team, they may be grumbling and rumbling at the start. Many teams will. But as they're getting closer to achieving it, to reaching that summit, the shift is amazing. And once they're all standing on top and they realize what they've done, to look at them and see the pride, there's no better feeling for a leader than looking at a team that's just climbed Mount Everest.
Yeah.
And they did it themselves.
And so another conversation for another time is how that differs from managing a team to leading a team. And that's a whole another conversation. But I think that a big part of it is finding, as the person at the top of that hierarchy, is finding that balance between managing what you're doing and leading those that are doing it for you.
And you had said one other thing when we were talking before regarding some of your workplaces or your businesses, where if they outgrow their position or they outgrow their work, that you're actually happy for them. Like you're rewarded when you know that they're moving on and that they've learned everything they can, in that role or in that position. Did you want to speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, like I mentioned at the very beginning, is that we want them to outgrow us. We want them to excel and exceed beyond what we're doing. And that might mean that they realize while they're with us that they've got a knack for something else that they didn't realize. And if we can support that and kind of let them out the nest and go to something else where they can find fulfillment, I don't want somebody sitting at a desk that's not having a good time and enjoying their job. I've been there and done that and have seen colleagues like that. I want people to be the best selves that they can. And that may mean not working for me anymore. And not that that's a bad thing. There's going to be those times where it just isn't the right fit. But if you're happy where you are, but you realize that you're hitting your head and you just want more, I think it's part of my job as a leader to help you find that next ceiling where you can still kind of fly and find growth, because we all want to learn and continue learning. And there are people that I love that I work with, but I can't hoard them. I need to be able to share them with other people, and that might mean them moving on to something different.
And I'm sure as leaders, and what you both have learned and are teaching, you see when someone's lost the light in their eyes, or they, like, the incentive or the joy. Like it's very, I think physically, if you have the opportunity to see those people, it's very clear if they're happy, right? And sometimes like you said, it could be other things, personal things going on in their life, or they might have, you talked at, work centric or central or home, right?
Yep.
But I think that was a really valid point, and I've actually never heard anyone say that, where it is seasons, and there are times where you're really taxed, whether someone's health has gone downhill, or you're having a child, or where your life does shift, and you have to be able to adjust with that. And so does your work, but a lot of workplaces won't, right?
Well, we hope they will.
I hope they will too.
We truly do. We hope they will. If a simple example would be if you're an accountant, there's tax season, and tax season is taxing not just on the accountant, but on the accountant's family, and the amount of insane hours that an accountant has to put in. You can talk about farmers and seeding and harvest and the insane amount of time that they've got to put in. But then there is times where you can be more attentive to your family and yourself. And it's important to recognize those times and try and bridge them. And your corporation, the company that you work for, that organization, we feel that it's their responsibility to help you through all of that. It truly is.